Good morning, friends and enemies. We are back and alive from Berlin, the Germany game. I mean, what an incredible game for every single person that was there that was not an Atlanta Falcons fan. We're here today to talk about the Week 11 waiver wire for fantasy football because the playoffs are right around the corner, and these are the weeks that could make or break your lineup down the stretch. Just a quick reminder for Week 11, 2 teams on bye, Indianapolis Colts, New Orleans Saints. You might need to find some fill-ins for those players. You know how this works. We're 11 weeks in. Let's jump into the trending tab. We'll talk about players to pick up. We will talk about players that I am okay dropping at this point in the season. We'll start at the quarterback position, which is not something I typically do, but we do have to talk about the return of Joe Burrow. Obviously, he's been stashed in every Superflex league, but for one quarterback leagues, the news that we heard is that he is returning to practice, or he did return to practice already this week. They will open his 21-day practice window, which means he can return over the next 3 weeks, and they are planning on having him, or at least the sentiment right now, the vibe around his actual return will not be this week, will not be next week, but he is planning to return for Thanksgiving game against division rival Baltimore. Based on what we've seen from the Cincinnati defense up to this point in the season, there is no reason to not think that Joe Burrow is just going to have statistical output similar to what Joe Flacco is doing right now and what Joe Burrow did last year, which is a shitload of passing statistics. And when you look more importantly at the fantasy playoff schedule for the Cincinnati Bengals and Joe Burrow, this is why you need to make sure that you go get him if you need a quarterback or if he's available and you can stream him down the stretch. They're at home against Baltimore in Week 15. They're at Miami in Week 16, and they are at home against the Arizona Cardinals in Week 17. That is a beautiful playoff schedule for Joe Burrow and this Bengals passing offense. Outside of him, I usually don't go into streaming options, but, you know, that's just the serendipity of life today. My other favorite streamers would be Joe Flacco against Pittsburgh this week, Tua against Washington Sunday morning. I believe they are in Spain. That is a phenomenal stream just based on how the Commanders' defense is playing. Even J.J. McCarthy against the Bears, they let up an abnormal amount of fantasy points, and McCarthy can use his legs a lot. And then Penix against Carolina. Those would be like my under-the-radar streaming options that I prefer this week of all the guys that are not obviously highly owned. We're going to skip the running backs right now and go over to the wide receiver position. These guys are all over 50% owned. I've been talking about stashing Jayden Reed for a minute now with Tucker Kraft out. Jayden Reed, I think, should be returning within the next couple of weeks. So if you have availability on your IR, he's going to be put right back into a real role in this offense. And even a 60, 65, 70% role for a guy like Jayden Reed in this Green Bay Packers offense is going to be one that I think is usable for fantasy down the stretch. There are a lot of dudes that are, again, above 50%. Juedy finally had a good game against the Jets, completely depleted defense. Do I feel like that's going to hold going forward? Probably not, but they have great matchups at home against Baltimore. You got Vegas, you've got a depleted San Fran defense, Tennessee, Chicago, but like they have a really, really good schedule down the stretch. If only you can actually trust that offense and trust Jerry Judy. Parker Washington, really strong game. I will say, like Jacoby Myers, I expect to be more and more involved in the offense as the season progresses. Brian Thomas Jr. will eventually be back. Brenton Strange had his practice window open as well. And then Travis Hunter, I do believe there's some optimism that he could return after his 4-week IR stint, but for the time being, Parker Washington will probably be the number one target for Trevor Lawrence as long as BTJ is out. Tez Johnson's been a fucking monster, and there is no return in sight for Chris Godwin, Jalen McMillan, or Bucky Irving, so I expect him to continue to be a large part of this offense. Keon Coleman, not interested whatsoever. These next two are dudes that I do want to talk about. Alec Pierce has been incredible up to this point. I think most people who follow fantasy or like listen to fantasy podcasts probably already know that, but he had his first touchdown of the year on Sunday in London. I gotta say, it was a beautiful throw and catch. Being there in person, I was like, Alec Pierce, he kind of different this year, man. He is working intermediate, short, deep parts of the field. He is one of, if not the best all-around receiver they have going for them right now. Michael Pittman, probably better, but I think they're kind of neck and neck in terms of target share, in terms of like valuable targets in fantasy. And Alec Pierce right now, top 10 in receiving yards per game on the season. If he had scored more touchdowns, again, first touchdown this entire year on Sunday in Germany, had he been scoring touchdowns up to this point, he'd be looked at as a top 20, top 15 option, the way that Daniel Jones is playing. Now, they do have their bye in Week 11, so you have to consider that if he is available and you're going to spend a lot of money on him, but I want him down the stretch. He is a pretty much must-start wide receiver 3 right now with weekly upside, given the involvement in this offense. If we head over to the Fantasy Life website, we look at Alec Pierce, we look at his routes run. He is running as many routes as Michael Pittman. What you'll notice is his average depth of target, 20.4 yards downfield. He has a 48% air yard share. That is 4th in the entire NFL. And among active players who are not injured right now, that's second only behind Jackson Smith and Jigba. He has a 30% end zone target share here. All right. So Alec Pierce, nothing is gimmicky here. It is not just fluky deep plays. He's getting targeted over every area of the field. And Daniel Jones, obviously, he's come back down to earth over the last couple of weeks. But if you expect him to be a top 15, top 12 quarterback over the remainder of the season, Pierce, again, is a super viable wide receiver 3. And I would spend pretty significant fab if I needed a wide receiver at this point. And again, these stats are brought to you by Fantasy Life. If you go to fantasylife.com, if you sign up for any of their subscriptions, which are a full calendar year long, I think it's like $100 for the entire year. So you'll get this all the way into week 10 of next year. You'll get it throughout draft season, all that good stuff throughout the summer to prepare you for your drafts. But more importantly, being able to look at snaps, targets, routes run, end zone targets, air yard share, stuff like that is really important if you're trying to be serious about fantasy, especially into the playoffs right now. If you sign up for any of their Fantasy Life Plus subscriptions and you use code BDGE when you check out, you will get 20% off. All right. It is one of the best deals. This utilization report, one of the best tools in all of fantasy football. I've been using it all year. Obviously, if you've been paying attention to my content, this is a pillar to it. All right. So you can have this pillar in your life. Fantasylife.com, promo code BDGE when you check out, link below. And then underneath Pierce, we have Luther Burden, who has kind of just been a roller coaster of like, oh, pick him up this week, don't pick him up this week. Continues to look good on film. Alameda Zacchaeus continues to kind of show who he is over the course of the season. DJ Moore was in and out of the game with a shoulder injury. We'll have to pay attention to practice reports to see if it's anything serious or long-term. Again, you kind of just need one of these receivers to either fall out of favor with Ben Johnson or get hurt. And I think Luther Burden steps into a pretty significant role in an offense that's, looking better and better as the weeks progress. I will say they have a very, very tough schedule down the stretch. They're at Minnesota in week 11. In week 13, they're at Philly. In week 14, they're at Green Bay, Cleveland, then Green Bay again, and then at San Francisco. So he will probably need an injury and not just like being a snap share guy, but he's one of the more appealing high-end stashes right now. And then the last guy who's not on this list, surprisingly, was probably on the list last week if I had to guess, is Adonai Mitchell. Now, he obviously came over in the Sauce Gardner trade. He is on the Jets roster now. And the reason that he's enticing is Garrett Wilson's injury. Wilson re-injured his knee that caused him to miss a bunch of games prior to their bye week. Came out, played, re-aggravated it, and now it is said that he is supposed to miss at least the next 3 to 4 weeks, which opens up that depth chart, which was already cheeks open, right? They had Josh Reynolds. They had a bunch of fraud players. And Adonai Mitchell, we know he's a talented player. He's really explosive. He's a good route runner, a good separator, does a lot of good things that are exciting in theory, right? And he just hasn't got any opportunity in Indy. And he's shown glimpses throughout the couple of years he's been in the league. Like when he does get chances to start, he'll make big plays. He never really strings together good weeks or good months together. But if he can get onto the field, he didn't play in his first week with the Jets. I don't know if that was like a playbook thing or a traveling thing or whatever that was. But I would anticipate him with Garrett Wilson out to be active for the coming games. And like I said, the depth chart is just completely fucking wide open in New York. I think Adonai Mitchell, he's a really good high upside stash. Like he's just as likely to give you 0 points next week as he is to maybe break out for a 15-point game. But these are the guys where it's like, it's completely unknown what's going to happen in the depth chart over the next month without Garrett Wilson. And we've seen games where Garrett Wilson has, 8, 10, 12, 14 targets. Maybe Adonai Mitchell kind of becomes that guy to a lesser degree, and you could start him as a flex down the stretch. We have bye weeks in week 12. We have bye weeks in week 14. Maybe he's someone that can get into your lineup if he gets up to speed. So Adonai Mitchell's another like high upside, completely low floor stash over the course of the season that I would rank relatively highly amongst the waiver wire ads that are less than 50% owned. Moving back to the running back position, I mean, the reason I moved off altogether was this week is literally just high-end handcuffs. Like Tyler Allgier getting a ton of work at the goal line, but if he doesn't score a touchdown, he's going to give you an absolute flop week. We already know what Tyler Allgier is without Bijan Robinson here. Yes, everyone's going to be more excited about him this week because he's coming off of a multi-touchdown game, but like we know what Allgier is. He's just either this or this or this or this or this. Not someone you want in your lineup. Brian Robinson, a high-end handcuff to C-Mac. Emmanuel Wilson, a high-end handcuff to Josh Jacobs. Tank Bigsby is a handcuff to Saquon Barkley. Sean Tucker, I think people are going to think it's more interesting than it probably is. We don't have a return timetable in sight for Bucky Irving, which makes me believe he's going to miss week 11. He's already been ruled out for it. He's probably going to miss week 12 at the LA Rams. So like best case scenario, probably 2 to 3 weeks from now, we could see Bucky return, but it feels pretty ominous right now. So I have no idea when we're going to see him back. Rashad White has kind of operated as the bell cow. And then on Sunday, we saw Rashad White have 10 carries for, I think it was like 38 yards. Sean Tucker, 9 for 53. Actually, the first running back this year to have over 50 rushing yards against the New England Patriots elite run defense. That being said, he still got outsnapped by Rashad White 70-30. Like there was no real split outside of the carries being close to each other. And I do think it's a little bit more of a duo than when we saw Bucky originally go out and White was handling every down duties. Tucker, again, like maybe his role continues to slowly grow and grow and grow, but they trust Rachaad White in passing down situations. At worst, this is going to be a 50-50 carry situation. They're at Buffalo, they're at the Rams. So not like amazingly strong matchups for the running backs either. Tucker is a guy that I get will get a lot of hype this week. I'm not overly interested in because we know the timetable for Bucky's eventually going to come to an end, and you're never going to be able to trust Sean Tucker in your lineup. The one guy I do want to call out is Blake Corum, because the rotation between Corum and Kyren Williams, while the snap share is still like 65-35, 60-40, it's getting closer, and that's because they are on a drive-by-drive rotation right now, which is a little bit alarming for Kyren Williams. He's still playing really well. He's still very efficient because this offense is humming on all cylinders right now, and it's going to open up a lot of opportunity for the starting running back in Kyren Williams. But they are truly going Kyren, Blake, Kyren, Blake, Kyren, Blake, and the snaps haven't gotten there because a lot of Blake's drives have just ended up being ones that don't get down to the goal line for whatever reason. It's more unlucky than it is him just not being a guy in this offense. But Sean McVay is clearly trusting him more and more and more. So I actually like Blake Corum as the guy to stash here because the Rams offense is playing Super Bowl caliber level and he's getting a lot of carries. They're doing like what Chuba and Rico was a few weeks ago before Rico just put him in the dirt. So just know that if you're a Kyren Blake owner. And then should go without saying, but Trey Benson's a mustache right now. I think he's the workhorse when he comes back from his injury, whenever that is. Tight end, nothing too interesting. Cade Otton, he's been good. Like anytime that Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and Jalen McMillan and all their receivers are hurt, he's going to be a high floor tight end. He's actually hit 8 or more PPR points in 5 straight games, and he's been at double-digit PPR points in 4 of the last 5 games, including this obviously big week in week 10, 17.2 points, 12 targets, 9 catches, 82 yards. He just continues to be involved in this offense, obviously, with all of the injuries. The other one I would note, or the other two I actually would probably note, would be Brenton Strange. They did open up his practice window, so he should be back, and he was involved in this offense pretty significantly in the beginning part of the year, and they are down a lot of players right now, a lot of receivers, a lot of weapons, so I anticipate him to come back and pretty much be a full-time player ASAP, so I think he's a viable-ish streaming option, probably a week after he returns. Same thing with Dawson Knox. You have Dalton Kincaid, who's going to miss the next 2 to 3 weeks with a hamstring strain. That being said, Dawson Knox is not anywhere near the pass catcher that Dalton Kincaid is. I do think Dawson Knox will be the starter in theory. I do think Dawson Knox will probably play 65 to 70% of the snaps, but I also think there's a chance that Jackson Hawes, this rookie tight end that has continuously appeared throughout the year and been a guy that's making plays in the passing game, could just like outscore Dawson Knox in fantasy. It's probably not going to happen. Knox will probably run the most routes and see the most targets at the tight end position, and this is a Buffalo Bills offense right now that is running a lot of their offense through the tight end position, but again, Knox is not Kincaid. He can't run the routes Kincaid can run. He can't stretch the seam and stretch the field like Kincaid can. And while he'll see an uptick, if you look historically over the last couple of years in games that Kincaid missed, Knox really isn't even that high leverage of a play in fantasy. He's not a 1-for-1 replacement whatsoever. So you could do worse streaming tight end, but I think he'll probably be ranked for the most part around like tight end 15 to 20 in that range, regardless of him having the opportunity to be the starter here. And as always, just a reminder, my personal waiver wire rankings that have fab suggestions, that have the actual rankings of all of these guys are live right now on BDGE.co. You can become a Big Dog member right there. It's the only place to get these. The cheapest way to do it is by going to deposit $10 or more on our partner website, MGM, or the MGM app. And once you do so and play a slip on there as a first-time depositor, play any slip on MGM, they will give you a promo code that gets you 3 months free to the Big Dog membership if you are in a qualified state. So move over to the trending down tab, skill players only. Isaiah Davis, yeah, very much droppable without Breece Hall getting moved there. Just another kind of high-end handcuff. Chris Rodriguez was taking more work this week, and then he did leave with a shoulder injury, which could open the door back up for Ja'Cory Crosskey-Moret, but we have to see the severity of it. They play Miami, which is a good matchup, but yeah, I mean, if you need the room, I'm fine dropping Chris Rodriguez. I would hold JCM because of the Chris Rodriguez injury. Kincaid, I'd like to hold on to if I could. Josh Downs, I mean, realistically, prior to this game in Germany, if you look at his PPR numbers, 15-7, 12-9, 16-2, 11-4, he's been extremely usable as a flex option if you need to throw him into your lineup. Common guy would definitely hold on to him. Very, very high-end handcuff that I think has a little bit of flex appeal. Tank, high-end handcuff. Ty Johnson can drop. Justin Fields can probably drop. Yeah, Dobbs definitely do not drop. Shamir DK, you could drop. Matthew Golden. He's one of those I don't want to drop. I don't want to drop, but I get it if you need to. High-end handcuff, Emmanuel Wilson. Darnell Mooney, absolutely brutal return against Indy. 8 targets, just dropping balls, catches 1 pass. Our schedule down the stretch is so good. Carolina, New Orleans, New York Jets over the next 3. So, like, he'll probably have a spike week in one of those weeks. But, yeah, really tough to decide when. Gainwell's always just been kind of a high-end handcuff that, like, might catch 1 ball, might catch 4 balls. He's whatever. Mason, I actually, as weird as it sounds, I think he is droppable if you need the roster spot. Zacchaeus droppable. Singletary, probably hold on to. Flacco wouldn't drop. Garrett Wilson, do not drop. Luke Musgrave, just a shit show last night against the Eagles. I wouldn't drop him. Calvin Austin, always droppable. Trey Tucker, do not drop. Barner can definitely drop. Ingram's just been exactly who he's been all year. He's really doing nothing for you, so I would drop him. Ramondre, I would hold on to. I mean, there's probably a good chance he misses another week or 2, but I still think down the stretch, like, he's going to be a big player in this backfield on a team that's 8-2 down the stretch. Like, they need him. They want a bruiser there. I'd hold on to him. Hunter Henry, you know who he is. Kyle Pitts, the Woat. Bayshaw Tootin, droppable. Zonovan Knight, I think is probably droppable with Trey Benson nearing return. He did bang up his ankle at the end of the game, I believe. Could open the door for Michael Carter, Martin Mercado, whatever. Isaiah Pacheco, I think their plan is to return next week. Like, that's what Andy Reid said. But most of the Twitter doctors I had kind of listened to said that they'd be not overly surprised if he returned in week 11, but there's definitely a higher chance that he doesn't than, like, the kind of the vibe that Andy Reid was giving off of him. We do have an update right here. It actually says Chiefs coach Andy Reid says Isaiah Pacheco may take more time. It appears Pacheco will likely miss more time due to his knee injury, which does mean Kareem Hunt will probably get more run, but they're at Denver in week 11, so I don't want to start Kareem Hunt if I don't have to, but I'd probably hold on to Pacheco for the stretch run if I could. All right, well, that's the waiver wire for week 11. I will be back with running back rankings tomorrow. Wide receiver rankings on Thursday, our private sit-start Q&A on Saturday, because this week is an international game. So again, if you want the waiver wire rankings, if you want my weekly rankings, if you want access to the private Q&A, you could do that by becoming a Big Dog member on BDGE.co. Sign up straight from the website or through our partner website, MGM, using code BDGE. When you deposit $10 or more, as soon as you play your first slip, they will send you a message in-app that gives you 3 months free to the Big Dog membership. All right? Thank you guys for hanging out with me today. I love y'all. Smoochies.